Lecture series Broadening Students' Horizon at Yeniju So. Talk on the British Parliament by Estidar and Edmund McGregor. Outline 1. Introduction, who I am, Butu, etc. 2. A bit about the UK. 3. Parliament and government. 4. A history of Parliament. 5. Democracy, elections, and MPs. 6. Mock election. 7. Question and answer session. In detail. Section 1. Introduction. Tennis line. Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Edmund McGregor, and I am the husband of Estidar Lulsegged, who is the daughter of Dr. Lulsegged Alamea. It is a great privilege and honor to be here with you this afternoon. I live in London, and I work at the House of Commons, part of the British Parliament in London. My job is a computer manager, and I also supply information to members of Parliament, or MPs as they are called. My wife and I are delighted to be visiting my father and mother-in-law in Ethiopia this Christmas, and especially honored to be here at Yeniju So School. I have been asked to tell you a bit about the British Parliament, which is where I work. I will start by talking about Britain. Then we will look at the functions of government and Parliament, the history of Parliament in Britain, elections and MPs, and you will have the opportunity to take part in your own election. At the end of my talk, there will be a time for answering any questions you may have. But in the meantime, if there is anything you do not understand or would like to have explained to you more fully, please stop me and ask me to explain it to you. Section 2, about the UK. I would like to start by telling you a few facts about Britain. The United Kingdom is about 1/4 the size of Ethiopia, but has the same population as Ethiopia. The capital is London, which is about twice the size of Addis Ababa. The United Kingdom is made up of 4 countries: England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. I live in England, but was born in Wales. Also, I have a Scottish name, McGregor, because my ancestors were from Scotland. Section 3, Parliament and Government. What do we mean when we say Parliament? Well, in the UK, Parliament is made up of 3 things: the Queen, the House of Lords, about 1,300 people who are not elected, and the House of Commons, 659 elected representatives. I will talk a bit more about the House of Commons and the House of Lords later. The government is made up of about 100 people from the political party that has the most seats in the House of Commons, as determined by a general election. In the UK at the moment, this is the Labour Party. Most of them are members of the Parliament, or MPs. Their job is to manage the country, and they are led by the Prime Minister, Tony Blair. The government makes the important decisions in Britain, but these decisions have to be approved by Parliament. The government runs or manages the country. So what does Parliament do? Well, in the UK, it has a number of important functions. These include making new laws, examining the work of government, and in some cases criticizing it, controlling finance. Only the House of Commons can give permission for the government to collect taxes, and debating current affairs. In order to understand why Parliament is the way it is today, it is important to learn something of the history of Parliament in Britain. Section 4, A History of Parliament. The year 1066, nearly 1,000 years ago, is a very important date in British history. It is the year that Duke William of Normandy, in France, invaded England and became King of England. King William, or William the Conqueror as he is known, was all-powerful. He ruled England and could do anything he wanted. But he nevertheless had a group of people who gave him advice and information on how to run the country and make laws. King William did not have to follow their advice, but he could if he wanted to. This group of advisors, mainly made up of lords and bishops and others from the church, was an early form of what would become the British Parliament. Throughout the centuries which followed, power moved away from the king to the Parliament. In other words, the later kings gave more and more of their power to Parliament, so that today, our present queen has very little power, although a new law can only come into existence if she agrees to it and signs the paper. And most of the power is with Parliament and the government. This was a gradual process, but some of the important stages along the way were as follows. The kings who followed William the Conqueror, who, remember, was all-powerful, found it more and more difficult to find money for government. In 1215, the people of the Assembly, what was to become Parliament, forced him to sign an important document called the Magna Carta. This document said that the king, it was King John at the time, had to obtain the permission of Parliament before raising any taxes. This important principle still applies in Britain today. Every time the government wants to raise taxes, it has to get the permission of Parliament. The signing of the Magna Carta was the first step in the process of moving power away from the king to Parliament. Another important development happened in the year 1254. Up until that time, the assembly consisted of noblemen and chiefs, or barons as they were called. In Ethiopia, the equivalent would be ras, as well as bishops and others from the church. This is a bit like our present-day House of Lords. In 1254, King Henry III wanted to make this assembly include representatives of the towns, cities, and counties, and these new people, for the first time, were elected to their jobs. I will talk more about elections later, but this meant that citizens in the towns they represented voted for their representative, and the person with the most votes became the representative. This group of elected people is a bit like our present-day House of Commons. In both groups, the Lords and the Commons, together were referred to as Parliament for the first time in 1254. Over the years that followed, the function of Parliament expanded from just agreeing to taxes to begin with, to meeting to discuss general political issues. In 1377, Parliament developed the custom of electing one person, called the Speaker, to communicate their decisions to the king. From time to time, Parliament would sometimes refuse a request from the king for money, especially if the money was for fighting an unpopular war. In 1523, the then Speaker of the House of Commons, Sir Thomas More, refused a request from King Henry VIII for an enormous amount of money to fight the French. But after this defiance, Sir Thomas More was imprisoned, tried, and had his head cut off. One of the most terrible times for Parliament, and indeed for England, was in the 17th century between the years 1640 and 1660. This was a time of great upheaval, during which time there was a civil war in England. King Charles I was executed, and England had no king for about 12 years. More and more power was transferred to Parliament, so that by the time the monarchy was restored in 1660, when Charles II became king, Parliament had established its total independence from the crown. Parliament was also able to impose some limits on the king. For instance, it could dismiss unpopular ministers who had been appointed by the king. In 1678, there was a new development in Parliament: the formation of political parties. Parliament split itself into two groups, called the Tories, those who supported the king, and the Whigs, those who opposed him. These political parties remained for the next 200 years, and we still have the Tory party, the present-day Conservative Party. In 1688, the new monarchs, King William and Queen Mary, they ruled jointly, realized that their position depended on the will of the people. This led to a parliament developing into the form we know it today, with free elections, frequent parliaments, freedom of speech and debate, and ministers who are accountable to Parliament. The main developments since then have been a further shift of power from the monarch to Parliament, the Act of Union of 1707, in which Scotland became part of Great Britain. Its own parliament was abolished and merged with the Westminster Parliament, and an increase in the number of people who were allowed to vote. This happened in stages, with at first only rich men being allowed to vote, then most men, and finally, in 1918, women were given the right to vote, but only those over the age of 30. It wasn't until 1928 that all men and women over the age of 18 were allowed to vote in Britain. Section 5, Elections and MPs. I would like now to talk a bit about the present-day House of Commons and also about elections. The elected representatives in the House of Commons are called Members of Parliament, or MPs for short. The UK is divided into 659 areas. These are called constituencies. Each constituency elects a member of Parliament. Anyone can be a candidate for Parliament, but those who belong to one of the main political parties, i.e. Labour, Conservative, or Liberal Democrat, have a greater chance of being elected. At each general election, which takes place about every 5 years, all adults in the UK can vote in their local constituency or local area. The candidate who gets the greatest number of votes becomes the MP for that area. Section 6, Mock Election. To help you understand how the election works, I would like you all to take part in a mock election. We can imagine that Yenagoe So School is a constituency, one of the 659 areas which the UK is divided into. and that we are about to have an election. Just like any election in the UK, there will be a number of candidates, in this case 3, who put themselves forward as prospective MPs. There will be 3 candidates, whom I will call Joe Blogs, John Doe, and other. I would like, please, 3 volunteers to play the part of these 3 candidates. The 3 candidates are going to speak briefly on the subject of what I would do if I were the head teacher of Yeneju So School. Remember that you're trying to get as many people as possible to vote for you. So you might say something like, if I were the head teacher, I would give everyone 6-month holiday a year. Or if I were the head teacher, I would give every student here a new car. Please take a few moments to think about what popular changes you would make to the school. Please speak for no more than 2 minutes, and try and convince your fellow students why they should vote for you. Would you please come up to the polling booth here and vote for the candidate you prefer? Section 7, Questions and Answers. Section 8, Concluding Words. Mention availability of leaflets and information. Example, show poster of Palace of Westminster and Big Ben. Mention CD-ROM. Gives much more information on Parliament, especially the history, and also includes some famous speeches made in the House of Commons. Illustrations used. Map of UK. 80 ballot papers. Ballot box.